When did we start throwing people away? Have you noticed how quickly our culture tells us to walk away? Walk away from relationships, walk away from family, walk away from difficult conversations, walk away from anyone who disturbs your peace. Sometimes that advice is absolutely necessary. But sometimes I wonder if we've stopped asking the harder question. Are we really protecting our peace, or are we avoiding the very conversations, emotions, and discomfort that help us grow? Have we convinced ourselves that every uncomfortable relationship should just be left behind? And have we become uncomfortable with discomfort itself? Is discomfort something we should always avoid? Or are we walking away from the very moments that invite us to become wiser, stronger, and more compassionate? Or is this situation truly a place where you're not mad, dissatisfied, or hurt anymore? You're simply done. Because here's what I've learned: growth rarely feels comfortable. Some of the greatest lessons in my life didn't come from the moments that felt peaceful. They came from the conversations that I did not want to have, and the relationships that truly challenged me, and the misunderstandings that forced me to see another perspective, and the moments when my pride wanted to run as fast as I can. But my soul, it asked me to pause. We live in a culture that has become incredibly good at removing discomfort. But discomfort isn't always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's a sign that something is changing. It could be the space where empathy is born. Sometimes it's where forgiveness begins, where boundaries become clear, and where we become more fully human. Welcome to Divine Angelic Guidance. My name is Michelle Irene Stupski. I am your host of Divine Angelic Guidance, a spiritual life coach, best-selling author of You Weren't Born to Fit In, and your guide for those seeking more peace, purpose, and connection in everyday life. Today's conversation may challenge you, not because I'm here to tell anyone what they should do, but because I think we've stopped asking the hard questions. And over the last several years, while working with my clients and through everyday conversations with my husband, my kids, my friends, my coworkers, I've noticed something that really honestly bothers me. We've become incredibly quick to cut people off. Parents, children, friends, siblings, entire families. The phrase we hear most often is, "I'm protecting my peace." Now, before we go any further, I want to be very clear with this. There are relationships that truly are unsafe. There are situations involving abuse and violence and manipulation or repeated harm where distance is not only appropriate, it's necessary. This episode isn't about asking anyone to remain in a relationship that continues to destroy them. Boundaries are healthy. Sometimes distance is the healthiest decision we can make. But that's not what concerns me. I mean, it does concern me, but that's not what this podcast is about. Because what concerns me is how quickly we've made permanent separation our first response instead of our last. And somewhere along the way, it feels like cancel culture left social media and entered our homes. We've become comfortable throwing people away instead of working through the discomfort of being human. And that really makes me wonder. Have we confused protecting our peace with avoiding the work that real human decency sometimes asks us? Because I believe we can do both. We can protect our peace and still leave room for compassion. We can have boundaries and still have love. We can say no more to unhealthy behavior without deciding someone no longer has value. And those are two very different things. Life isn't just black and white. Life is filled with color. It's filled with complexity. It's filled with stories we don't fully know. And it's filled with an awful lot of gray. not the grays in my hair. I believe the gray is where wisdom lives. The gray is where compassion lives. The gray is where discernment begins, because discernment asks a different question. Instead of asking who's right or who's wrong, it asks what is true, what is loving, what is healthy, what creates the greatest healing. Not necessarily what protects my peace. I think we've become so focused on discovering who is responsible for our pain that we've forgotten to ask what we're responsible for now. Because blame may explain our wounds, it may validate our experiences, it may even help us understand why we became who we are. But blame by itself doesn't heal us. And if it doesn't create a better version of ourselves, eventually every one of us reaches a crossroads where we have to decide, what am I going to do with what happened to me? That is where the power returns. And that's where I want to bring parents into this conversation, because I've also noticed something that really saddens me. There seems to be a growing belief that if your childhood wasn't perfect, your parents must be the reason your life is difficult today. Again, hear me clearly. Some parents caused unimaginable harm. Some relationships require firm boundaries or even permanent distance. This is not about dismissing those realities. It's about asking whether we've become too quick to assume that every painful childhood story has only one villain. Every soul you meet is carrying a story that you cannot fully see. Your parents were once children as well. Long before they became your mother or father, they were someone's little boy or someone's little girl. They inherited fears they didn't choose, just like you. They inherited beliefs they never questioned. They lived in patterns they didn't even realize they were repeating. And many were never taught emotional regulation. Many never heard the words, "I'm proud of you," or "I love you." And many grew up believing survival was more important than connection. Understanding that doesn't erase accountability. It doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it often changes the way we hold another person's humanity. That's what compassion does. Compassion doesn't excuse harmful behavior. Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation, and boundaries aren't punishment, although they are often used as such. And accountability doesn't require hatred. This is why I don't believe our goal is simply to protect our peace. I believe our goal is to become so rooted in our peace that we no longer make decisions from our wounds. Instead, we make them from wisdom through the spiritual practice of discernment. Discernment asks us to pause before reacting, to breathe before deciding, and to pray before assuming, and to become curious before becoming certain. It asks us to consider, maybe I need a boundary, maybe I need a conversation, maybe I need to do a little more forgiveness, or maybe I need to grieve the parent that I wished I had. Maybe I need to walk away, or maybe I need to stop expecting someone to become who they simply don't know how to be. Every situation is different, and every relationship is different. And every soul deserves the dignity of being seen as more than the worst thing they've ever done. I think that's what our culture is missing. Not more opinions, not more labels or blame, but more discernment. Because discernment doesn't ask us to ignore the truth. It asks us to hold truth and compassion in the same hand. And that may be one of the most spiritual things we'll ever learn to do. As someone whose life began with separation through adoption, I know firsthand what disconnection feels like. We've all experienced separation in many forms. We came into this world seeking a thread that ties us to something greater. And when that thread feels uncertain or broken, it can leave a quiet longing within the soul. And over time, I began to see my life through a different lens. Instead of viewing my story only through the pain of separation, I began to recognize it as a part of a much larger spiritual unfolding. The circumstances of our lives, our families, our struggles, our moments of loss often become the very pathways that lead us back to ourselves. My adoption did not define my worth or determine my belonging. Instead, it revealed a deeper truth. Belonging is not something granted to us by others. It is something we uncover within ourselves. There is a divine purpose of separation. In the beginning, every soul emerged from the divine radiance of Source. Each one ignited from a single, boundless light that gave rise to existence. This light was pure and infinite, embodying unity and wholeness. Yet, to expand its brilliance, to experience creation in new ways, Source extended itself, sending sparks of its divine essence across time and space. And each spark became a unique soul, a star in the vast cosmic tapestry. And within each of us resides this divine spark, an eternal reminder that though we may feel apart, we remain intimately connected to all that exists. This connection is our sacred light, an essence carrying the wisdom, love, and strength of our origins. For adoptees, this experience holds a profound resonance. You may feel the ache of being parted not just once, but multiple times. First, as a soul emerging from Source, then from the womb through the sacred vessel of birth, and again through separation from your birth mother if you were adopted. My own mother never saw me. She never got to hold me. But in truth, separation is a universal experience. Every human being is parted from the safety of the womb upon birth, thrust into the world in a moment of profound change. This initial parting is one we all share. The second experience of being physically apart from another being, the first being our light source from Source. I know the ache of wondering where you belong. I know the questions that can follow us for decades. And I'm not dismissing any type of disconnection. But this conversation is important to me because every broken relationship creates another story of loss. Sometimes that loss is necessary. Sometimes it isn't. And I think we've stopped slowing down long enough to know the difference. And maybe that's because we've become incredibly good at identifying what hurts us and not celebrating what lifts us. In many ways, that's progress. Because for generations, people suffered in silence. They didn't have words like trauma, emotional neglect, boundaries, central nervous system, or generational patterns. But today we do. Those words have helped countless people finally understand experiences they couldn't explain before. That awareness is strength, and it matters. But I also wonder if we've unintentionally created another problem. Somewhere along the way, awareness became accusation. Social media has given us labels for everything. A difficult conversation becomes abuse. An imperfect parent becomes a narcissist. A disagreement becomes grounds for permanent separation. And while those labels absolutely fit some situations, they don't fit every situation. So before we close, if today's conversation has resonated with you, I have one small favor to ask. Please take a moment to follow the podcast, leave a review, share this episode with someone that you love, or leave a comment wherever you're listening if comments are available. I know we hear people talk about algorithms all the time, but the truth is, those simple actions really do help these conversations reach someone who may need them today. It's about creating connection. It's about reminding people they are not alone. And if these conversations have ever brought you comfort, clarity, or even just a new perspective, thank you for helping me pass that gift along to someone else. I'm truly honored to walk this journey with you. And if today's message spoke to your heart, You'll find these beautiful conversations woven throughout the book You Weren't Born to Fit In. It isn't just a book about healing or spiritual growth. It's an invitation to remember who you are beneath the expectations, the labels, the roles, and even the wounds that you've carried for a very long time. One beautiful reader recently shared these words with me. It's just what I needed right now in my life. It touched my soul and reminded me that I'm special, just as I am. It empowered me to believe I am worthy of love. When I read that, I smiled because that's exactly why I wrote it. My hope has never been to tell you who to become. My hope is simply to help you remember who you've been all along. And before you make that next difficult decision, before you walk away, before you react, pause. Take one slow, intentional breath. This is what I call the sacred pause. It's the space between what happened and what you choose to do next. It's where fear becomes awareness and emotion gives way to wisdom. It's where the discernment we talked about quietly asks you, is this truly about protecting my peace or something deeper asking for my attention? Maybe the answer is a boundary, a conversation, more forgiveness. Maybe it's distance, or maybe it's simply seeing another person's humanity while honoring your own. You don't have to rush this answer ever. The sacred pause reminds us that our wisest decisions are rarely made in reaction. They are made in presence with inspired action. And when we pause, we create space, not just between ourselves and the situation, but between our emotions and our response. We give ourselves permission to breathe, to listen, and to ask, am I reacting from my wounds or responding from my wisdom? That's where discernment lives. That's where peace becomes something we embody rather than something we protect. So the next time life asks something difficult of you, don't be afraid of the pause. Don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to leave it. Don't rush to label it. Simply pause, breathe, and listen. Allow your soul the opportunity to speak before your emotions decide for you. Until next time, remember, you are never alone. You are always being guided by a power greater than yourself. You are supported. You are deeply loved. Trust your soul. Trust your discernment. And whenever life asks something difficult of you, pause, breathe, and listen. Have a beautiful day.